This week on LTC News, sitting down with Rita.
A thrill to see things happen.
Arts activism, and a chat with Lowell's top cop.
So we are at ground zero.
Stay with us. Welcome to LTC News and welcome to 2017. I'm Olu Ibraham, filling in for Al Gentile. LTC News is a weekly look at news and stories from our community. You can find us on LTC channels 8 and 99 and on the web at ltc.org or get the link each week on Facebook. Rita Mercier started her 22nd year as Lowell City Councilor. She has seen many changes over the years and came into the studio to speak with Wendy Blum about the year ahead for City Council.
Well, thank you so much, Rita, for coming in and being on LTC News. Now, you are starting your 22nd year as a City Councilor.
Yes.
You've seen a lot of changes over the years. What is new for this year?
Okay, first off, let me wish you and the listening audience a very happy new year, 2017. And I'm so excited about this new year because we have so many irons in the fire that are starting, and we want to see them progress, like the birth of a child. We're just so excited. We, of course, have the Hamilton Canal project. We're hoping to see new development there with Watermark and healthcare center there. We also have the Judicial Center that people were so skeptical about, thinking that'll never happen. I always believed, yes, we have to have it, and we're gonna have it, and I wanna say we see shovels in the ground, but actually we see excavators in the ground, so I'm so excited about that. We as a city will be looking for the next phase of the building of the high school, whether it be a new renovated workout for the school or a new school itself. I prefer to have it downtown, but my mind is always open. I never say that that's my final decision. I like to hear what's happening. So we have Perkins and Eastman that are the designers for the school. We're in good hands because they have built schools before. So there's many things that are happening, and there are things that are going to happen that I don't even know about yet. It always happens within a year that things come out. We have new development of many units. We have Sal Lepoli's units that are going to be built on Thorndike Street. We have $140 million in buildings of all the units that are going to be. Wellman Street, the old Sun building. Altogether, it's $140 million of economic development. So we try to have things happen. I think the state likes us because when the city of Lowell says we need money for this, and we are lucky to get it, we do that money right away. We don't sit there and say, gee, now let's have a plan. We always have a plan, and we always move forward. That's what's so great about our city. It's the movers and shakers in the city. We're very fortunate, in my opinion, to have Kevin Murphy as our city manager. He knows the ins and outs of the State House and what to look for, and he's just remarkable. We, as his bosses, say that we'd like this to happen, and he fulfills that. So I'm very honored to be serving at this time with a great city council, and it's just exciting all the time. I know I've been there 22 years, but it's always exciting and a thrill to see things happen.
What is your vision for all of this new development and the way that Lowell will be when all of this development actually comes into being?
Well, they say build it and they will come. That's what we're trying to do. We're making Lowell a destination city. You can't say that if things aren't happening here. There's so much to happen. We try to do things little by little, and I don't mean with economic development as such, but everything plays a role in it. For example, we don't have all good. There are some serious things that we have to deal with, like the opioid epidemic crisis, and how we're going to attack that. And it's a disease, and we are fighting that all the time. So there's good along with the bad, but I think that that's a very significant and important issue. We have our district attorney, Marion Ryan, who meets once a month, and I'm a part of that group that meets with her and with the other people that take place with that. We have Corey Belanger, who does a city opioid task force for the city. So we're right on top of it to help. We have a police department. We're trying to give them all the tools that we can to make their jobs, not that their jobs are easy, but to give them the tools that they need to apprehend individuals. We spent $500,000 to get 47 cameras up and running. I know people said, I don't like to be under the microscope, but if you have nothing to hide, and if that were your mother that got robbed and beaten by a thug, you would be happy that that camera was up there to bring that person to justice. So there's many things that are happening, but I do run into people every now and then that say, gee, I haven't been here in years. We moved to Seattle, Washington, or we moved to Pennsylvania, and I come back here to see my hometown, and it has improved significantly to the good. So that's always refreshing to hear that. Just when you think, oh, why do I do this? Someone comes along and gives you a compliment to the city saying, before it was like this, but now it's better. So we're always trying to make it better than we found it when we first came here.
Well, it seems to be such an activist and active city council, and
It is.
you've got wonderful things going to go on, and plus a lot of challenges. And
Yeah, there's challenges.
yeah, but thank you so much,
Oh, my
and have
pleasure.
a wonderful New Year.
Thank you so much, and Happy New Year to the listeners.
Continuing to look ahead with city government, City Manager Kevin Murphy adds a word of caution about this year's budget.
It looks very challenging from a budgetary standpoint, is that, the cost of doing business keeps going up. And, we have to keep taxes low. So in order to provide the quality services that the citizens have become used to over the past 3 years, we're going to have to be very, very frugal. So we want to make sure we keep public safety a priority, education, and curb appeal. But it costs money, and we're going to have to be very careful with our budgeting in the next year.
City Manager Murphy does note, however, the many positive changes occurring within the city.
I think the city looks so much better than it did 3 years ago. If you look at the parks, if you look at the streets and the sidewalk, look at Lucy Larkin Park with the new walkway. And now we're going to be beginning in the spring reinventing JFK Plaza. I think we're just making the city a lot prettier, and I think that's a positive thing for the residents.
And now Brian Dorrington, LTC Director of Municipal Programming, brings us a City Council synopsis.
Hello and welcome to the City Council synopsis for the meeting of January 3rd, 2017. That's right, I said it, 2017. Which is also known as the Year of the Fire Rooster, according to the Chinese zodiac calendar. So for those of you who prefer your years measured by animals, not time, this is for you. Hello and welcome to the City Council synopsis for the meeting of January 3rd, Fire Rooster. I have to admit that has a tasty ring to it. New year, new website. The city just launched their new website this week, which features many upgrades and a cost savings to the city. The web address is still the same, lowellma.gov, but the site features a much more user-friendly interface, as well as some cool new features like bill pay and a newly integrated calendar of events associated with Like Lowell. A Lowell mobile app is also on its way. It's unclear what the features will be, but rumors are... I'm sorry, I can't hear anything. My earpiece isn't working. We did a sound check, this should have been fixed. I'm going to be honest, this feels a lot like a sabotage. The property tax is going up just over 5% this year, with the average household paying an extra $189 a year. City Manager Kevin Murphy defended the increase, citing the rising costs of pensions, insurance, and the increased investments in capital projects. A new ordinance will allow the city to designate certain properties as public nuisance properties. Owners whose properties have numerous criminal complaints, code violations, and tie up city resources through excess calls to police and fire can now be fined. Looks like I'm going to have to tone down my weekly bingo nights.
Bingo!
I've got a bingo!
Bingo!
Both Fire Chief Jeff Winward and Police Superintendent William Taylor supported the measure, pointing out that a small number of problem properties tie up resources, which makes it difficult for officers and firefighters to provide resources to other parts of the city. Well, that's all I have for you today. Remember, you can watch the meetings in their entirety on LTC Channel 99 and on demand anytime at ltc.org. Thanks, and be swell.
Hello, I'm Courtney O'Malley, and welcome back to Let's Go with the Greater Merrimack Valley. Today we're here at the Tsongas Center at UMass Lowell, where on January 6th, 7th, and 8th, the 33rd annual Colonial Classic synchronized skating competition will take place. This event has been coming to the city of Lowell for many years, and this year we have over 150 teams and 2,100 competitors from all over the East Coast and as far as Cleveland, Ohio. We're very excited to have them back, and we hope that you come out and see them as well. Tickets can be purchased here at the box office throughout the course of the event. And for more information and for a schedule of events, visit www.colonialclassic.org.
What is the role of art in politics? That's the question that Middlesex adjunct professor Mary Hart asked after reading an article that had gone viral on the internet. The article was written by Yale professor Timothy Snyder, and in it he listed 20 lessons that citizens could take from 20th century world history that could prevent the spread of fascism or communism within our own American democracy.
And I read it through, and I really thought it was great stuff because it was about how to participate in government in a way that we don't gradually see the erosion of our rights.
Although the list included some simple concepts such as defend an institution or be a patriot, there were others that were more complex. To get to the essential message of each lesson, Mary Hart and 20 local artists created an art exhibit here at our own LTC gallery.
The points were good, but they were a little bit wordy, and they were a little bit, big language and obscure. And I thought, boy, if only people would read these. And then I thought, but you're a designer and you know artists. Why don't you have artists take each point and illustrate it? And that way make it more accessible, more interesting, and maybe more compelling to people. Anybody could do whatever they wanted what they felt illustrated the point. No framing, no glass, no mats, just straight up poster art.
I think these people are very connected to what's happening politically in current events, and I think the show absolutely gives that deep feeling.
Sometimes it's literal, sometimes it's not. Stand up is about being willing to put yourself out there and not be a sheep. And the person isn't even standing up, which is funny, but it's about action. And when you look at her piece, you'll see just how active it is. Another one that comes to mind is titled Vigilance, but it's really about make eye contact and talk to people. And it's about building community in your community. But it's about making community out of people who aren't just like you. And that comes across blindingly clear in the artwork. And I think that's the beauty of using art for political expression or personal expression, is that you can take some dry subject matter and make it lively and fun. So I hope that when you come to the exhibit, you'll laugh at some of the pieces, and some of them might make you scratch your head, and some of them might make you feel profound, but there's a lot of interesting work to see.
The 20 Lessons exhibit runs through January 28th. Stop by and take a look during LTC open hours. You can also meet the artists at a public reception on Tuesday, January 10th from 5 to 7 p.m. In this week's Sunspot, Chris Scott sits down with Lowell Police Superintendent Bill Taylor to discuss the opioid crisis, crime statistics, and other police department matters.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Scott, the Enterprise Editor of The Sun. Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Sunspot. With me is the Lowell Police Superintendent, Bill Taylor. Bill Taylor, thanks for coming in tonight. We're going to be talking just about a few issues that have been prevalent with the police department in the city, and we'll also take a look forward to 2017. So, Bill, let's start with the opiate epidemic. I heard you on the radio yesterday with Ted Panos and WCAP. You were talking about the last 6 months of 2016, giving you some encouragement heading into 2017. Could you expand on that a little bit and tell us what you're seeing?
Yes, thanks. Well, I am a little bit encouraged, and the first 6 months of 2016 were especially bad. We had 40 fatal heroin or opiate overdoses in that 6 month period. And since then, the last 6 months of 2016, we've probably cut that number in half. We're going to end up maybe about 62 total, which is terrible. It's horrific. And if you're one of the families involved or one of your loved ones or a co-worker or something, it's catastrophic. It's going to be incredibly difficult. But if we're trying to find some encouraging things as we move forward here, my hope is that many of the things that we've put together as a community, and it really is a community-wide response to this issue, maybe it's starting to bear some fruit, and we're starting to go in the right direction.
Could we put that number into context? How many total fatal opiate overdoses did the city see in 2015?
2015, it was 46, so we've climbed to 62 this past year. And those numbers will rise a little bit when we get the final analysis from the medical examiner's office. They did rise a little bit in 15, and we expect that. But I think the key point is that we really almost reached that number in the first 6 months of 2016, and since then it has somewhat slowed. And so that's encouraging.
What do you attribute that slowing to?
Well, I think that as part of the 2 grants that we did receive from the federal government, there's an evaluation and a research component to it, and so they will be looking into that to try and make those accurate determinations using data and analysis. But kind of from an anecdotal perspective, just kind of off the top of my head, I think it's a community-wide effort, and I think you've seen both at a federal, state, and local level, everybody marshaling their resources together, doing literally everything we can think of to try and stem this incredible situation that we find ourselves in. And it's education, treatment, enforcement, and I think every one of those efforts have stepped up.
Could you point to one as being more important or having more impact than another one? I know we've had conversations in the past about law enforcement and government getting tougher with doctors prescribing opioids, or maybe prescribing opioids that don't need to be prescribed.
That's right.
I'm not saying that's it, but could you?
Well, what we do know is that research is already in the bank, so to speak. And we do know that approximately 4 out of 5 people that ultimately develop an opiate addiction started with prescription drug use. So that was a key component to it, and that at a state level has already been addressed at the state legislature. They've put that effort forward last year, and so the hope is that moving forward there'll be less people tragically, getting into that pipeline, that cycle of addiction.
Is it too soon, though, to look at that state law that was passed in the last legislative session and signed by Governor Baker as having a big impact on the most recent number?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Right, I would agree with that. So at a local level, I'm very proud of the efforts of the police department, the officers, and the civilian employees there. We've done a tremendous job. We developed this co-op program, which is really a non-traditional role for police and fire department personnel. We put together a team, and initially we put it together with 0 money. So we just took a police personnel officer, Kevin Gano, who is
he's well known.
Quite a guy. He does God's work. I mean, he really does. He's out there every day trying to positively impact people that are, in the throes of addiction. And Chief Winwood was extremely willing to put together a firefighter, Kevin Jones, another individual that has a really, an effort in this regard. And then we teamed up with Lowell House. And we did that with Louis Diaz, who is the caseworker from Lowell House that has the expertise in the field.
Please give our viewers just a little thumbnail sketch of I know what it is, but the co-op program. Just exactly what is it?
It's a community opioid outreach program, and it combines initially those three entities, Lowell Police, Lowell Fire, and Lowell House, to a team. And the focus on them initially is to go out and identify individuals that have recently overdosed on opiates but survived, and get those people into treatment. So they have to leverage the treatment community, they have to make those connections, those outreach to the whole area treatment community, and then find the individuals that just within the past 24 hours or so overdosed and survived, and get them, if literally any way we can, into a treatment facility so that they can not be the next statistic. And so that's how it started. It has expanded since then. We applied for some grants. We've been the grant program in the police and fire department, Mary Ann Bellata, has been enormously successful. So we received many grants, but 3 specifically in this regard, and to the tune of almost $1.3 million to really solidify this program, expand it, and then really taking the direction from the city council and the city manager. One of the key components is to get that oversight that is drastically needed and bring the Lowell Health Department on board as kind of a supervision and oversight of this whole project to build their capacity. So we have taken some of that grant money allows us to provide a citywide substance abuse coordinator to really kind of marshal and focus all the city's various efforts in this regard and give them some direction and some oversight.
Now, has that person been hired yet?
They're in the final process of selecting that individual.
Okay, we'll have to revisit that issue.
So that's a key component.
You've been in law enforcement now 35 years?
Yes.
Did you ever see this coming, this opioid thing?
As you know, I spent a large portion of my initial career in the drug investigations, narcotics, working in regional task forces and things like that. And it was difficult, it was deadly. No, I will tell you that this has eclipsed anything I've seen in law enforcement. And I think most people involved in law enforcement, public health, will echo things that I've said. This is the public safety and public health issue of our time. There's no question about it. Think of it logically. In the same time period, Lowell has seen, and the men and women of the police department are responsible for this along with our community partners. We've seen a fantastic reduction in violent crime in this community. We went very close to almost 2 years without a violent homicide in this community. I'm going to say that probably hasn't happened in decades, right? At the same time, we've experienced that, a reduction in crime rates and in the fear of crime, which is equally or perhaps more important. We've had this tragic sequence of events with the opiate epidemic occur, and we have 62 members of our community succumb to that, die from that in the same period of time. And those are 62 families and loved ones and co-workers that are ripped apart. And so really we are increasingly focusing our efforts in that regard.
If you had to point to one factor that created this epidemic, cheap heroin, fentanyl, drug dealers passing out free samples, all issues that we've talked about in various interviews over the years or over the last several months, drug dealers being mobile, not being in like a drug den or a house, what would it be? Or cheap heroin, what would it be?
I don't think you can put it, I think there's two. Okay. I would say it's the, and I've seen some data on this, and I've watched some documentaries about the push of prescription opiates in the communities over the last number of years. I think they put it 5 to 10 years. And then at the same time, the introduction of fentanyl. The fentanyl comes from China. It's manufactured synthetically in China. It then is shipped typically to Mexico. And then in Mexico, it's combined with heroin as a profit increaser, because if you think of it logically, to make heroin, you need land to grow the poppies, right? Fentanyl is cheap. It comes synthetically. It comes prepackaged from China. They combine it with heroin, and it's greatly increases their profits. And then they ship it into the United States.
So that's a great segue to the next topic, although related. There was a big bust of fentanyl in Methuen over the weekend. A guy from New York was arrested. I think he had $1.2 million worth of fentanyl. How big a deal is that? And do you think that Methuen's just 10 miles away? was some of that fentanyl, would it have ended up on Lowell streets?
Oh, there's no question about it. Absolutely, there's no question. It is a big deal. It's a significant bust. I really only know what was reported in the media about it. But I do know from an intelligence perspective, over the past month or so, we've gotten information that the DEA and other regional task forces, which is really the concept that is the most appropriate to deal with these issues, have made 2 significant busts in Connecticut. Similar size seizures, even one greater.
Of fentanyl?
Of fentanyl. They really never know if it's straight fentanyl, heroin mixture, but it's essentially that combination. So they are significantly increasing their seizures. The bad part of it is, I was at the International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference in California in October. I went to a briefing by the Mexican Federal Police and our DEA representative from Mexico. They gave a presentation which was, as you can imagine, there probably had to be 700 law enforcement officials from across the country there. One of the maps they displayed clearly showed a major trafficking pattern from Mexico directly to Massachusetts. So we are at ground zero.
Your predecessor, Ken LaValle, I had a conversation with him once where he talked about Route 110 from Methuen, from the Lawrence-Methuen area to Lowell as being a major corridor. And is that still, do you believe that's still the case?
I think, I don't know if that particular single road is as prominent as it once was. What I can tell you is the way that people distribute drugs now involves technology. It's not the house on the corner anymore.
Well, let's
or
talk
the
about
street
that for a
corner.
minute. Right.
It's technology, it's apps, it's encrypted apps, it's things like that. So it combines, these investigations get to be somewhat, even at a lower level, the need for surveillance units and technology, they get fairly complicated.
I asked you once, can't you just go bust into the house and bust the drug dealer, with a battering ram and knock down the door and have 5 or 6 cops with helmets and vests? And you looked at me like I was, you said, that's not the way it's done anymore.
No, it isn't. Yeah, it's not like the French Connection. They use increasingly the same technology that's available for international terrorism is also available for drug dealers. They can use these encrypted apps. And so what we have to do, a very effective way to do this is to combine our resources with federal and state task forces. We have a few officers involved in these task forces working from a regional basis because they use our geographic boundaries against law enforcement. So that's why you'll see they set up on the Lowell-Tewksbury line. They make that connection electronically or digitally, as we call it now somehow, and then they'll have, even at a real low level, they'll make that connection using technology. Then they'll meet up. They'll have the individual follow them. They'll literally go from Tewksbury into Lowell, back into Tewksbury to Andover, whatever it might be. And then when they're comfortable, they'll make the transaction. And that's a low-level transaction.
We only have about a minute left. Looking ahead in 2017, the opioid crisis will certainly remain first and foremost on the priority list of the police department. Could you just give us a couple of others?
So I think one thing that is a little bit lost below the radar, in addition to everything we talked about, is domestic violence. I think that is one, a stubborn and chronic issue in law enforcement in the whole area. And we did receive a federal grant for that. Again, our grant department does an unbelievable job. And we're looking to try and see if we can make some inroads and reduce the level of domestic violence.
Can you identify one other?
Well, our community partnerships. I think that is one thing that we have done an outstanding job. The men and women in this organization always do that, and I'd like to increase more that community partnership to build those trusting relationships.
Well, that sounds great, Bill. Good luck with all that, and thanks for coming in.
Okay, great.
And we'll look forward to speaking with you. Thanks for tuning in, and next week we hope to have on Salah Kafawi, the Lowell Superintendent of Schools. Have a good night, everyone.
That's it for this edition of LTC News. I'm Olu Ibraham. Thanks for joining us.